Chapter 8. Heads Together. The tranquillity that Gordon Zellaby had been pleasantly regaining after the wedding of Alan and Ferrelyn 2 days before was dissipated by the eruption of Dr. Willers. The doctor, still upset by the near tragedy of Rosie Platch, was in an agitated state which gave Zellaby some difficulty in grasping his purpose. By stages, however, he discovered that the doctor and the vicar had agreed to ask for his help, or, more importantly, it seemed, Angela's help, over something that was far from clear, and that the misadventure to the Platch child had brought Willers on his mission earlier than he had intended. "So far we've been lucky," Willers said, "but this is a second attempted suicide in a week. At any moment there may be another, perhaps a successful one. We must get this thing out in the open and relieve the tension. We cannot afford any more delay."
"As far as I'm concerned, it's certainly not in the open.
What thing is this?" inquired Zellaby. Willers stared at him for a moment, and then rubbed his forehead. "Sorry," he said. "I've been so wound up with it lately, I forgot you mightn't know. It's all these inexplicable pregnancies."
"Inexplicable?"
Zellaby raised his eyebrows. Willers did his best to explain why they were inexplicable. "Well, the whole thing is so incomprehensible," he concluded, "that the vicar and I have been driven back onto the theory that it must in some way be connected with the other incomprehensible thing we have had here, the day out." Zellaby regarded him thoughtfully for several moments. One thing, about which there could be no doubt at all, was the genuineness of the doctor's anxiety.
"It seems a curious theory," he suggested, cautiously.
"It's a more than curious situation," replied Willers. "However, that can wait. What can't wait is a lot of women who are on the verge of hysteria. Some of them are my patients, more of them are going to be, and unless this state of tension is resolved quickly—" He left the sentence unfinished with a shake of his head.
"A lot of women?" repeated Zellaby. "Somewhat vague. How many?"
"I can't say for certain," Willers admitted.
"Well, in round figures. We need some idea of what we have to deal with."
"I should say, about 65 to 70.
"What?"
Zellaby stared at him incredulously. "I told you it is the devil of a problem."
"But if you're not sure, why pitch on 65?
"Because that's my estimate. It's a pretty rough estimate, I admit, but I think you'll find that it's about the number of women of childbearing age in the village," Willers told him. Later that evening, after Angela Zellaby, looking tired and shocked, had gone to bed, Willers said, "I'm very sorry to have had to inflict this, Zellaby, but she would have had to know soon, in any case. My hope is that the others can take it only half as staunchly as your wife has." Zellaby gave a sombre nod.
"She is grand, isn't she? I wonder how you or I would have stood up to a shock like that."
"It's a hell of a thing," Willers agreed. "So far, most of the married women will have been easy in their minds, but now, in order to stop the unmarried going neurotic, we're going to have to upset them too. But there's no way around that I can see."
"One thing that's been worrying me all the evening is how much we ought to tell them," Zellaby said. "Should we leave the thing a mystery and let them draw conclusions eventually for themselves, or is there a better way?"
"Well, damn it, it is a mystery, isn't it?" the doctor pointed out.
"The how is a very mysterious mystery," Zellaby admitted, "but I don't think that there can be much doubt as to what has happened. Nor, I imagine, do you, unless you're deliberately trying to avoid it."
"You tell me," suggested Willers. "Your line of reasoning may be different. I hope it is." Zellaby shook his head.
"The conclusion,"
he began, and then suddenly broke off, staring at the picture of his daughter.
"My God!" he exclaimed. "Ferrelyn, too."
He turned his head slowly towards the doctor.
"I suppose the answer is that you just don't know."
Willers hesitated. "I can't be sure," he said. Zellaby pushed back his white hair and lapsed back in his chair. He remained staring at the pattern of the carpet for a full minute in silence. Then he roused himself. With a studied detachment of manner, he observed,
"There are 3, no, perhaps 4 possibilities that suggest themselves. You would, I think, have mentioned it, had there been any evidence of the explanation that will at once occur to the more obvious-minded. Besides, there are other points against that, which I will come to shortly."
"Quite so," agreed the doctor.
Zellaby nodded. Then it is possible, is it not, in some of the lower forms at any rate, to induce parthenogenesis.
But not, as far as is known, among any of the higher forms, certainly not among mammals.
Quite. Well then, there is artificial insemination.
There is, admitted the doctor.
But you don't think so?
I don't.
Nor do I. And that, Zellaby went on a little grimly, leaves the possibility of implantation, which could result in what someone, Huxley, I think, has called xenogenesis. That is, the production of a form that could be unlike that of the parent. Or should one perhaps say host? It would not be the true parent.
Dr. Willers frowned. I have been hoping that might not occur to them, he said.
Zellaby shook his head. I hope, my dear fellow, that you would do better to abandon. It may not occur to them straight away, but it is the explanation, if that is not too definite a word, that the intelligent ones are bound to arrive at before long. For look here, we can agree, can we not, to dismiss parthenogenesis. There has never been a reliably documented case.
The doctor nodded.
Well then, it will soon become as clear to them as it is to me, and must be to you, that both crude assault and AI are put right out of court by sheer mathematics. And this, incidentally, would seem to apply to parthenogenesis too, if that were possible. By the law of averages, it is simply not possible in any sizable group of women, taken at random, for more than 25% of them to be in the same stage of pregnancy at the same time.
Well, began the doctor doubtfully.
All right, let us make a concession to say 33⅓%, which is high. But then, if your estimate of the incidence is right, or anywhere near right, the present situation is still statistically quite impossible. Ergo, whether we like it or not, we are thrown back upon the fourth and last possibility, that implantation of fertilized ova must have taken place during the day out.
Willers was looking very unhappy, and still not altogether convinced. I'd question your "and last." There could be other possibilities that have not occurred to us. With a touch of impatience, Zellaby said,
Can you suggest any form of conception that does not come up against that mathematical barrier? No? Very well. Then it follows that this cannot be conception, therefore it must be incubation.
The doctor sighed. All right, I'll grant you that, he said. For myself, I am only incidentally concerned about how it happened. My anxiety is for the welfare of those who are, and are going to be, my patients.
You will be concerned later on, Zellaby put in, because since they are all at the same stage now, it follows that the births are going to occur, barring accidents, over a quite limited period later on. All round about the end of June or the first week of July. Everything else being normal, of course.
At present, Willers continued firmly, my chief worry is to decrease their anxiety, not to increase it. And for that reason, we must do our best to stop this implantation idea getting about for as long as we can. It's panicky stuff. For their good, I ask you to pooh-pooh convincingly any suggestion of the kind that may come your way.
Yes, agreed Zellaby after consideration. Yes, I agree. Here, we really do have a case for benign censorship, I think. He frowned. It's difficult to appreciate how a woman sees these matters. All that I can say is that if I were to be called upon, even in the most propitious circumstances, to bring forth life, the prospect would awe me considerably. Had I any reason to suspect that it might be some unexpected form of life, I should probably go quite mad. Most women wouldn't, of course. They are mentally tougher, but some might, so a convincing dismissal of the possibility will be best.
He paused, considering.
Now, we ought to get down to giving my wife a line to work on. There are various angles to be covered. One of the most tricky is going to be publicity, or rather, no publicity.
Lord, yes, said Willers. Once the press get hold of it.
I know. God help us if they do. Day-by-day commentary with 6 months of gloriously mounting speculation to go. They certainly wouldn't miss the xenogenesis angle. More likely to run a forecasting competition. All right, then. MI managed to keep the day out of the papers. We'll have to see what they can do about this. Now, let's rough out the approach for her.
Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe to hear more great stories.